Morning, everybody. Just checking, I think it's coming up to 10 o'clock. So we're going to be starting shortly. And I just want to do some quick little welcome and housekeeping rules before I hand over to Rowena. So thanks, especially for those of you who've come in person today. It's really great to have you here. And I know there's a lot of folk that are still joining online. So it's great to see all of you coming in as well. Importantly, for those of you that are here in person, please ensure that you register using the QR code that's pasted on the door at the back. If you haven't done so yet, then just please ensure you do register because that is important for us. Then another housekeeping, the toilets. It's very quick and easy to find. If you head out the door and go left, you'll see there's a staircase with a big chandelier hanging just out here. Just follow the stairs down to the next floor. Take a first left and you'll see the men's and the ladies' toilets are right there. Then for the online chat, just a quick note that everybody who's online is welcome to engage in the chat. We've got a number of people that are monitoring the chat and hopefully we're able to relay your questions through to those of us that are presenting. So please feel free to participate online. That'd be really great. And yeah, I'm going to hand over to Rowena in a moment just to do the introductions. But before I do that, I'd like to just introduce Urs Kreuter. Urs is the editor of journal, African Journal of Range and Science. But Urs, I'll allow you to come and introduce yourself and talk very briefly about the journal and the message that you've got for participants today. Thanks.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for the moment to be able to chat with you. And I just want to say I'm not trying to hone in on Wiley's time here because our journal, the African Journal of Range and Forest Science, which is the Grassland Society's primary journal, is actually published by Taylor and Francis in conjunction with NISC. And so I'm not suggesting don't use Wiley journals at all. But I do want to ask, as the editor of the journal, since 2022, we're always looking for new associate editors. From a professional standpoint, that's a good thing for those of you who are in research or academia to do. And if you feel that you would like to do that and you have some experience in publishing, please do contact with me. I say that to both people in the room and especially also to people online. I'm always trying to diversify that pool because we have some very good associate editors, and guess what happens? I keep reaching out to the same people and overloading them, and I try to really hard not to do that. Another really important thing is if you're in the publishing world, and they're going to talk about that, is reviewing these journal articles. It is a peer-reviewed process. It's getting increasingly difficult to get people to agree to review manuscripts, but it's a critical aspect, both for your own publications, but for everybody else's as well. If you want to publish a peer-reviewed journal manuscript, you're going to have reviewers to review it and give you constructive feedback. Equally, other people need the same thing. So I'm just putting out a request that please, if you are interested, send me a letter. We'll make sure, or an email. We'll make sure that you're on the list so that when people are looking for reviewers, they can reach out to you as well. And then for those of you who do agree to review manuscripts, turnaround time is so critical. It's always the biggest thing that I have as an editor, is to get things turned around in a timely manner for the authors. Because I think if you're publishing, you all want to have a response and a decision from the editor fairly quickly. Well, that's all depends on how quickly reviewers turn around. I'm pretty aggressive in that regard. I go after people if they haven't submitted their reviews. I'll send them a personal message and say, really appreciate that you agreed to do this. We absolutely need your review so we can actually move on and give the authors a response. So please, if you're interested, please contact me. I have a very simple email address. It's my first name, urs@tamu.edu. TAMU is for Texas A&M University, which I'm still affiliated with, but I actually live here in South Africa now. So please just let me know if you're interested in being an associate editor or reviewer. I want to make sure that we can expand that pool. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Urs. Appreciated. And next, I'd like to introduce you to Rowena Gordon, who's here from the British Ecological Society. Rowena.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I think we're going to get some slides going. But just while we get them, oh, perfect. Thank you so much for joining. It's such an honor to be here and spending the day with you. So we're going to be getting to know each other a little bit first. This is going to be a really interactive day. So I really encourage you to chat with your neighbors, get to know people you haven't met before, and get to know us as well. So my name's Rowena. I'm from the British Ecological Society. I'm the senior managing editor, and I look after Journal of Ecology, which is our oldest journal, and Journal of Applied Ecology, which looks after like conservation applied research. So introductions for the day. So you've already heard from Errol Dowes. He is one of our editors on ecological solutions and evidence, and he's also based here in South Africa. I've already spoken about myself. We've got Ali Muth joining us all the way from America. I think it's 3 a.m. where she is now, and she's joining us to be with you all today. So that's incredible. Ali Muth is editor-in-chief of Ecology and Evolution and Journal of Biogeography, which are two Wiley-owned journals. We've also got Monica Ndlovu here today, who's a research assistant, local research assistant. She's going to be helping us out with activities. And we've got Adam Wheeler online as well. So Adam is from Wiley, and he's a senior manager in partner publishing. So you'll be hearing from all of us today, but you've just got me for now. So just a little bit of housekeeping. I know we've covered this a little bit already, but absolutely, if you're online, feel free to interrupt at any time, send a message. Thank you so much to the ladies looking after Zoom today. So at any point, if you message in the chat, we'll be notified. So I really encourage you to do that. And thank you as well to our tech guys today. So that I do encourage you for all the activities to do them online. So you can either do that on a piece of paper, or you can put your message in the chat. The only thing is the very first activity you won't be able to do on the Mentimeter. The Mentimeter is just for people in the room, but online you can put your message, your answer in the chat. So let's get to know each other. So if you have a device that can scan a QR code, you can scan this QR code here, or you can go to this URL on the screen, whatever's easier. So everyone in the room, if you can do this, and everyone online, if you can also do it just to see the questions, but you won't be able to answer online because it's capped at 50 participants, unfortunately. So when you scan it, you should be brought to 3 questions. Is everyone, can someone confirm it's working? Yeah? I think we might be able to switch over to the results. Thank you. So all the answers are anonymous. If you put your, oh, amazing. There we go. Yay. So I thought we'd have this at the beginning just to see the variety of research interests and specializations we have in the room. Nature-based solutions, urban, oh, everything's moving. Nice, thanks everyone. Grasslands is a big one. Good to see because we're at the Grasslands conference. So wetlands, urban ecosystem. Nice. Okay, there's nothing there that I wasn't expecting to see, which is good. So I think that you'll all find this this day very useful. Oh, it keeps going. Plants, insects, climate change. Nice. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. You should be able to move on to it on the Menti. There should be a next button to look at the next question. So I got into ecology or conservation because, and if you feel this doesn't apply to you, if you feel you don't work in ecology and conservation, what got you into the research area that you're in, or the area that you're working in? Any tech issues, let me know. Oh, nice. Custodian of nature. I really like that. That's really nice. Nature preservation, future generations. I love animals. That's me. Mm. Oh, right. Nice. Very interesting. So going into actually answer a specific question that you have. Limit pollutants, make a difference, curiosity, plant medicines, very interesting. Upbringing. Nice. Okay, I'm going to move on. The last question we have, you should be able to just click next. To what extent do you agree with the following? So we've got my research is relevant to a wider international audience. And if I submit a paper to a reputed society or Wiley journal, it will be assessed fairly. So this is like a sliding scale, and you can just pick from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And then it should bring out a nice, look at that. Okay, nice little graph. So it looks like we've still got some more answers coming in, but it looks like most people believe their research is relevant to a wider audience, but the answer about whether it will be assessed fairly is quite spread, actually. Okay. So we're gonna kind of talk about these things today. And hopefully by the end of the day, you might feel, maybe if you don't feel differently, you might feel maybe you can chat to societies or to Wiley and talk about your concerns, raise concerns. The thing about publishing is it's always changing, and practices are always changing. Mostly they're changing so that it can be more equitable and more fair. Okay, I'm ready to switch back to the presentation now. Thank you everyone for engaging with that. Oops. Cool. So who are we? So as I mentioned already, we're the British Ecological Society. So we're a global community of ecologists founded in 1913. We're the oldest ecological society in the world. And we publish 7 international journals. So we publish all of the 7 that have the big E on them. And then Ecology and Evolution is our partner journal, which we partner with Wiley on. And actually, Wiley is the publisher of all of our journals. So we're a very small team. There's about 40 of us in the British Ecological Society, and we look after the whole of the society. But we can't publish journals ourselves. There's a lot of work that goes into the actual publishing, and that's what Wiley are experts in. So everything that we earn through the journals is invested back into the ecological community. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Oh, before I do, I've got some guides I've put out at the back. And there's also some stickers, some leaflets, some cards. Feel free So the guides, I only brought one of each because they were quite heavy in my bag. So you can have a look through and you can scan this QR code. They're completely free and you can download any of these from the QR code. Or you can have a look through the hard copies there and download them yourself if you just Google Better Science Guides, British Ecological Society. And these are written with, a lot of the time they're written with our editors, or they're written with our internal team. So to talk a little bit more about what we do, so part of the things that we fund is education and careers. So we do a lot of free things, free resources for teachers. We run a summer school in the UK as well to engage young people with ecology. And we do a lot of free resources for schools in the UK. We also do funding and grants, and this is where we really work in a really international way. So we actually have 51% of our grant funding is earmarked for the Global South. So applications open and then they're assessed, and we make sure that 51% of the total pot goes to Global South research and funding research in the Global South by people in the Global South. So it's £500,000 a year, which I don't know what that is in Rand actually. But it's a lot of money, and it's a really cool thing. And that's basically what publishing in the BES journals funds, is this research all around the world. We also have events and communities. So we run Europe's largest ecology conference in December every year. This year it's in Edinburgh in Scotland. And we also have special interest groups, which are completely free to engage with, and you can join them from anywhere in the world. We also do policy work. This is mostly in the UK, but we are also expanding now to work more on international policy. So it's just helping governments to make the best with recommendations with the best ecological advice. And then we also have the publications, of course. So in the publications team, we work with authors to ensure the best possible ecological science is published, shared, and promoted. We've got editors from 48 countries and authors from all over the world. We've got a friendly and rigorous peer review process, which we'll be talking about later. And authors have told us that this helps to make their paper better. And then post-acceptance, we work with authors to share their work with as big an audience as possible through various things like blogs, podcasts, social media posts, and trying to get them in the news as well. And then one of the other things we do as the publications team is we do these capacity building workshops. So we often run these free, online, sometimes in person as well. And it's very cool that I'm here to do this in person. And we do these how to be a good reviewer, how to be an associate editor, and promoting your research. And these are available for free online as well to just watch if you miss them online. I'm going to hand over to Adam now to talk about Wiley a bit.
Thanks, Rowena. Can I just check that you can hear me okay, both physically in South Africa and also online across sub-Saharan Africa?
We can hear you here in the room, Adam.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name's Adam Wheeler. I'm Senior Manager here at Wiley. I'm speaking to you today from the Oxford office in the UK, where for the first time actually in a while, the weather isn't so good. We've had this incredible sort of week or two of great weather, but as an allotment owner, actually, I'm quite happy because it means that my allotment's being fed some water, some much needed water right now. So I'm quite happy about the current circumstances. And yes, it's true that British people only ever want to talk about the weather. Good morning. So, Wiley, I'm sure you can all read that there's a quick sort of summary paragraph of sort of like what Wiley represents. But as an organization, Wiley has been around for over 200 years, originating as a specialist books publisher in sort of the New York area in the 1800s, and then becoming a journals specialist and still book specialist, but journals publisher moving into the 20th century. Wiley has always had a relationship with learned societies and has been a society publisher for an extremely long time. But its acquisition of Blackwell Publishing, which is the sort of Oxford and Oxford-based element of the business, really made it the leading publisher for learned societies globally, and that happened in 2006. So since 2006, Wiley became Wiley Blackwell and subsequently became Wiley again in 2012. We've got locations globally. We consider ourselves to be very much a global company, and we're very proud of our heritage in research and learning, and in particular in journals publishing. As already mentioned, Reen has already mentioned, we have been publishers for the British Ecological Society titles for a very long period of time, and have partnered with them in launching new titles in recent years that lean into interdisciplinary fields and into practitioner fields. And one of those journals is, in fact, a journal that Errol works on, which is Ecological Solutions and Evidence. So please do speak to Errol about that fantastic journal if you're not familiar with it. And it really is a great publication and supports practitioner research. So please do tap him up if you get the opportunity. Next slide, please. So,
actually, Adam, I just got a message in the chat that people aren't able to see the slides online. So I just wanted to make sure that we could see the slides.
Okay, so is it just me that you can see?
Now we see them. That's great.
Oh, that's great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So anyway, the previous slide was just a paragraph summarizing Wiley and its objectives as an organization. So this is in particular something that's quite important, which is our environmental, social and governance. We are, I think probably speaking to the converted choir here really, but we are very much focused on being a responsible publisher, and we have honed in on three particular UN Sustainable Development Goals: quality education, reduced inequalities, and climate action as being fundamental to our objectives as an organisation. And this, will come into sort of a bit more sort of scope as we go through the day. So one of the things that we're very, very proud of is our Research in Support of Equity program, which is an online series that you can Google. If you Google Research in Support of Equity and Wiley, you'll find that we have a landing page with multiple special issues, multiple links to content that supports driving equality across research globally. And I would encourage you to take a look at that. But similarly, today's event is actually co-sponsored by the BES in Wiley, who have a specific annual fund that we dedicate towards driving research equity globally. And we're very, very proud of the work that we're doing with this fund and delighted to be here with you today. Next slide, please. And one last thing, as a global company, we pride ourselves in providing opportunities for all. So across the globe, we have a network of internal employee resource groups that support each other. So we have community builders. We have, as I said, specific people that work within diversity and inclusivity. And the one thing I really wanted to highlight is that our hiring practices are incredibly equitable. And actually 40% of our workforce is remote and so isn't tied to a specific location. So we also don't require our employees to have to necessarily work physically in an office in order to be a contributor to a truly inclusive and equal company. Thank you. Rowena, should I hand back to you for the next slides?
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to go quickly through the schedule. So I think you all have it in front of you, but just so you've got it here as well. So the first session, we're going to be talking about how to fund publishing. That's going to be myself and Adam. And then we're going to talk about how to get published, which will be myself and Ali. We've got lunch for an hour. And then we've got a writing workshop, which will be myself and Ali again. Co-design in research, which will be Errol. And then this afternoon, we've got how to get involved in publishing, which will be everyone, and a QA and panel discussion, which will also be everyone. So let's crack on. How are we doing for time, actually? We're a little behind already. We're going to talk first of all about how to pay for publishing. So publishing does cost money. This is just a fact. It costs people's time, it costs digital tools, it costs typesetting, and all of these things that go into making a published article look really nice and be findable, usable, and easy to read. So we believe that cost should never be a barrier to publishing. So it costs money, but it shouldn't be a barrier. So there are two main ways that you can pay for publishing. So just to look at two BES journals, but this is true for all journals. So there's a pay to read, free to publish option, which is paid for usually by your university library or your institution. So the Journal of Applied Ecology is one of these. So if you want to read a paper in Journal of Applied Ecology, you'll have to log in either through your institution, which will have paid to read the journal, or you'll have to maybe have a personal account with Wiley that you've paid for, or you can pay specifically for that one article that you want to read. And then the other option is open access, which is pay to publish, free to read, and that's paid for by the authors. So People in Nature, it's got this open access logo. Open access journals work like this. So they're always free to read for anyone, anywhere. But the cost instead is paid for usually by the authors. So the average cost to publish an article is £3,500, which is 84,250 Rand. And that's actually just an average across all fields. Our journals are actually a little bit cheaper than that to publish in, but that's an average across all sciences.
Rowena, could I quickly just add that within Journal of Applied Ecology, there is the option to publish open access as well?
Yes, yeah. So some journals, most journals that have that closed kind of, the library pays for it. You can also choose to publish open access, and then you'll pay to publish open access. So if you want to publish open access, you want to know what your options are to be able to pay for that. So there are three different things that I would encourage you to look into when you're looking to publish. So there are automatic waivers and discounts. There are transformative agreements, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then there are BES waivers as well. The one thing you should do is do this research before you submit your paper, because things like waivers and some other things, they need to be requested at the submission stage. So when you submit your article, there'll be a little question at submission. So you might be eligible for discounts, you might be eligible for a waiver, but you just need to tell the journal when you submit. So automatic waivers and discounts. So these are automatically applied for researchers from certain countries under this Research for Life program. So Research for Life is a completely independent organization. They use several criteria to assign a country to a group, either Group A or Group B, which is either 100% or a 50% waiver. So Group A on this map are the blue countries, and Group B are the like orangey yellow countries. So if you're an author from any of these countries and you submit to any Wiley journal or BES journal, you'll just automatically get this discount. And there won't actually be too much sort of admin-y stuff around that. I'm going to pass over to Adam to talk about transformative agreements.
Thanks very much, Rowena. So the map in front of you, you'll see is multicolored. The key thing about transformational agreements is that they are all quite similar, but at the same time, there is nuance between them. So some of them include journals which are fully gold open access, and some of them don't. I think that's probably the key thing to bear in mind. So you do need to check which transformative agreement you might fall under if your institution is is included. And we'll come on to, for example, the Sandlik institutions in a second, because they are actually a really nice example of a holistic provision. Transformative or transformational agreements are pretty holistic now globally, as you can see from the map. But there are also thousands of institutional arrangements with Wiley and with other publishing houses across the globe that are between the institution and the publisher for gold open access publishing. So you should always check also with your librarian to see if you have got funding provided, if it's not provided via waivers and discounts or via transformational agreements themselves. To draw your attention just quickly to Central and South America, we are currently piloting a new approach to open access funding in Central and South America, which involves a pricing project that equates the APC, or the price paid to make a article open access, with the equivalent income output for that particular region. So it's essentially another discount process, but quite heavily discounted. So, for example, in Brazil, you're looking at a 55% discount on the APC for gold open access journals in Brazil. But that goes hand in hand with a transformational agreement in Brazil, which provides gold open access publishing for free in the hybrid journals, in journals which are both subscription and open access. But there is also a heavily discounted gold open access route there as well, being piloted at present. The easiest thing to do is to check on the publisher's webpage what exposure you might have to waivers, discounts, and transformational agreements. There is plenty of signposting that will get you there, and various different tools that will show you your eligibility. But the other way to go is to check with your librarian if you're an institution. Next slide, please. So honing in on Africa and the Middle East, you'll see that, for example, in South Africa, we have a Sandlik agreement, which has 29 member institutions within South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana, and allows for complete access to all content, the ability to publish open access in the subscription journals or the hybrid journals, and the ability to publish gold open access in the in any gold open access journal, such as Ecological Solutions and Evidence. And again, this information is available on the publishers' websites and also QR codes.
Next slide.
Thank you.
Adam, do you want to talk to this one?
So this is this is your QR code link that can get you to our webpage where we demonstrate this information, but other publishers have similar web pages as well where you can find that information. So for Taylor and Francis, for example, you should be able to locate on Taylor and Francis's website a similar QR code that will get you through to their waivers and discounts programs and the open access accounts that are available for the arrangements that they have there. I've already mentioned the transformative agreement in Brazil, so I won't labour on that in the interest of time. Again, in the project deal in Germany, this is just a very good example of a national level agreement where the vast majority of institutions within a country are subscribed to the same arrangement. And of course, this is in terms of enabling publication. This is a very straightforward way of ensuring that authors just tick a box and then fast forward however many months through peer review and publication, their article is published, and that's the end of it, and that's all they have to do. So a really great example of scaled open access publishing.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
So I'll just say at this point that we will give you the slides. So if you want to have a look at this now, that's fine. But also I'll give you the slides so that next time you come to publish, you can look through these slides and just refresh your memory, because I know it's quite a lot to take in. So the final way to pay for publishing is to get a different kind of waiver. So the BES actually has an allowance. All of the open access journals have an allowance of waivers that we can grant every year. The criteria that we use for granting a waiver is very simply, can you afford to pay the publishing fees? And do we have any waivers left? And I can tell you that at the moment, the answer to the second question is yes, because we're not getting through as many waivers as we would like to. They're not being used by the community as much as we would like to. So if you were to submit to an open access journal, such as People in Nature, the one that was on the screen earlier, then at the submission stage, you would just say, I'd like to apply for a BES waiver. And what would happen is it would go to someone, it would go to my colleague who looks after People in Nature, and he'd look, do we have any waivers left? And he might just email you and say, can you check that you don't have any funding through your institution, like any of these deals that Adam just talked about? And if the answer is no, then we'll give you the waiver. It's as simple as that. And that'll be 100% waiver, so that will be completely free, essentially. Waivers are available to absolutely anyone, anywhere in the world. They're not linked to peer review, so it's not like my colleague will look at your paper and make an assessment on the quality of the paper and whether he thinks that we want that paper in the journal. It's totally separate. We actually don't look at the peer review process at all when we're looking at waivers, but it just must be requested at submission. So that point I made earlier about doing the research, it must be requested at submission so that we can get it all processed in time for the article being accepted. So on any of the BES journal websites, you can see this turtle. And if you click on this, it's got the full information about the waiver policy there. Or you can just come to me today if you're in the room and come and ask me any questions you have about it. And then the last thing to mention is if you are a BES member and you're not eligible for a waiver, so maybe you have funding, but you just don't have enough funding, or you don't want to spend all of the money on the publication fee, you get a 20% discount on APCs in our open access journals. So if they're around £2,000, you get around a £400 discount. So not bad. Adam, Sandvik.
Yes, thank you. I'll be super quick with this one. So alongside the Sandvik agreement that we also have an author engagement program, which is part of that arrangement, which is to help in many ways, like this workshop is doing, to help authors in Sandvik regions and also surrounding regions to have opportunities to develop their publishing skills or their editing skills. And I just wanted to spotlight that we have something coming up in August that might be of interest to you as a follow-up from this workshop, which is a webinar called Navigating Academic Publishing, Expert Sites and Strategies for Success. I know one of the speakers personally. He's an absolutely brilliant person and a great advocate for research, and that's Michael Willis. And I would encourage everybody who might be available to register for this event to do so on the URL that again will be shared on as a follow-up when we share the deck at the end of the session.
Thanks, Adam. So there's a thing there about questions, but given we're a bit behind, what I might ask you to do is, if you're online, put your questions in the chat and we'll respond to them a little bit later on. And then if you're in the room and you have any questions, just come grab me in any of the breaks and we can talk. So just to kind of...
Rowena, sorry to jump in. Could I quickly just add 2 points, if that's okay? One is just to thank you. One is to just quickly reinforce that the decision-making process, editorial decision-making process, is completely agnostic from any waivers at all. So not just the peer review but itself, but the editors don't have any involvement whatsoever in the granting of waivers. That's a society decision and not a editorial decision. And similarly, if any of these routes simply don't work out for whatever reason, there are still opportunities to publish in subscription element of the journals, such as Journal of Applied Ecology. It just means that they'll, for those institutions or organizations that don't have access, there will be a paywall essentially. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. So just to summarize these questions, so if you've got a paper and you want to publish it open access, first of all, check your Research for Life eligibility, check your country. Is it in the Research for Life group? If it's not, have a look at the transformative agreements on the Wiley website. Check this QR code, check it's dropped down by country, check your country, check your institution, see if there's anything there. If there's still not, then apply for an open access waiver. So the waiver policy is there to catch people that fall through these other nets. So make sure you've checked that you don't have funding and you apply at submission. And don't forget, if you're a member, you get 20% discount. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to our How to Get Published workshop. And I think we'll hopefully make up a little bit of time. So we're going to cover here choosing a journal, the editorial process and key decisions. And then I'll hand over to Ali to talk about an editor's view. So what do we mean when we talk about academic publishing? So we talk about journals, that's what we've been talking about so far today. But there's also grey literature, which is literature that exists outside of journals. Maybe it's that a conservation organization has been tracking how many birds they have on their land for the last 30 years. That would be classed as grey literature. It's still very useful to the academic community, but it's not written up as research. We also have conference abstracts, books or chapters of books, preprints like bioarchives, so putting your paper up online without peer review, just so that it's out there and findable and shareable, and then data repositories as well for your data once you've done your research. So why do we publish? I'm going to get you guys talking. So shout out some reasons why might we want to publish. And if you're online, you can put an answer in the chat. But why do you think we publish in science? Share results, yeah. Why is it important to share results? Yeah, nice. It's that standing on the shoulders of giants thing, moving forward. Yeah, hi. Yeah, really important. Raising awareness, making sure that the community is aware, the wider community. Don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. If someone's done something already, they can share their methodology. You can repeat it. You've got it the same. It's then comparable as well. You've not done it a different way. Any more thoughts? Any online?
So online, we've got to create awareness, share our knowledge, to get information from the lab to the public, to address gaps in knowledge, to allow others to learn from our research findings, to solve a problem, and to share knowledge with others and get peer scrutiny on findings, and to move science and policy forward.
Nice. Thanks very much, everyone. So yeah, it's for the sake of science, right? It's for the sake of knowledge. We want to pass on new ideas. We want to help others develop methods and hypotheses. We want there to be translation into industry, policy, practice, so that all of this science doesn't stay kind of theoretical and actually goes and makes a difference. And then to protect scientific integrity. So if we just put stuff online without scrutiny from peers, then it might not necessarily always be true, but it's good to have that peer review process as a sort of quality mark. And then also for yourself, It's to tell people about your research. It's an exchange of ideas. It's to promote your research area. And it's also to advance your career. It's an important part of most academics' career progression to prove that you're engaging with publishing research. So choosing a journal. So I've got here 3 very different journals. I'm guessing we've all heard of the first one, Nature. It's a very broad cross-disciplinary journal. It's got a wide variety of subjects, and it really does like groundbreaking, quote unquote, science. So its impact factor is 50. And impact factor is basically an average of citations of papers within that journal. So the average citation within Nature is around 50. And then we've got Journal of Ecology. So already, you might not know this, but Journal of Ecology is actually a plant ecology journal. So it's read by ecologists, but specifically plant ecologists. There's a variety of subjects around the central theme of plants. We also only publish significant advances in the field, so it's not quite groundbreaking, but it's a significant advance. We do make decisions based on the advance in the field, and it's got an impact factor of 5.4. So an average citation of a paper in that journal is 5. And then we've got the Fern Gazette, which is it's from the Teratological Society, the British Teratological Society journal. And it's got a very niche audience, only people who are working on ferns. It advances in a very specific field only, and it doesn't actually have an impact factor. So it's a great journal for its community, but for someone who's outside the fern community, they're not going to sort of hold a lot of, they're probably not even going to know about the journal. So I've got a little activity for you. Again, you can just shout these out, and I'm hoping that they don't all appear at once. So there are 2, well, there are probably more, but we're just going to talk today about society-owned journals and publisher-owned journals. So societies, as we're a society, we obviously own 7 journals. And there are a lot of other societies that also publish journals. So I've got a bit of a quiz. Does anybody know what this top zebra logo, does anyone know what that society is and what their journal is? Soma? I'm not sure. Let's have a look. Oh, it moved. Yeah, SOMA, yeah. Southern African Wildlife Management Association. They have one journal. It's the African Journal of Wildlife Research. So yeah, the next one, it's kind of clear from it's British Ecological Society, and I've already told you the answers. We publish 7 journals spanning the entire area of ecology. Nordic Society Oikos, they are a similar society to us in the Nordic countries in Europe, and they publish 5 journals spanning, again, all of ecology. Does anybody know this one? What did you say? Yeah, it's a zoo. Yeah. Zoological Society. Do you want to guess what the L is? It's London, Zoological Society London. So they publish 2 journals, Animal Conservation and Journal of Zoology. And then we've got here Zoological Society of Southern Africa. Does anyone want to take a guess how many journals they have? 1? Did someone say 1? It is 1. It's African Zoology. We've got Ecological Society of America, ESA. They have 6 journals, again, spanning all of ecology. And then the last one, does anyone know what this one is? Botanists, yeah, exactly. Southern African Association of Botanists. One journal, which is the South African Journal of Botany. And then also the Grassland Society has a journal. So lots and lots of society-owned journals. And societies own journals usually because it's a great way for the society to make money. And with that money, the society can then go on and achieve its other aims of serving the ecological community. So And one thing I should say actually about this is that it might be worth thinking about when you're choosing a journal. If you are a member of the Southern African Wildlife Management Association, it might be worth checking out their journal when you go to publish. If you're, it's something to consider, as well as the audience of the journal is who can you support, which society can you support by publishing with them, and what can they do for you, because they're usually quite nice, friendly journals to publish in. So choosing a journal a little bit more. So what I would always say is read the aims and scope of the journal. So this is the bit where it summarizes the journal in a couple of hundred words. What subjects does it cover? What does it not cover? What types of articles will it publish or will it not publish? So these are the aims and scope for Ecological Science, Ecological Solutions and Evidence, which is Errol's journal. And it's got a really short intro there. So it's publishing articles with direct relevance for the management of biological resources in ecological systems. So that's a very short description of what it is. So if you want to publish a paper and there's nothing about management of resources, then it's not going to get published in this journal, even if it's the best paper in the world. Have a look also at the editorial board. Do you recognize any names? Do they work in your area? And this is just a way of kind of seeing if it's the right fit, if you're not sure from the aims and scope. And again, if your article doesn't fit the remit, it has zero chance of being accepted. The paper that cures cancer will not be published in Ecological Solutions and Evidence, even though it's obviously a very important paper to be published. We've got a little activity now. So people online, you can just kind of number these or match them up however you like. People in the room, we've got physical paper. So if you work with your table group to answer these, and we'll just have about 5 or 10 minutes. So maybe if you work in like groups of 3 or 4. So we've got each of the journal names, we've got the short intro to the aims and scope, and then we've got some articles, and these are real articles that are published in these journals. And you want to match them up. There should be pens on your table as well. Any questions, let me know. are we getting on? Ready to feedback? I'll give you 1 more minute. People online, I see that there's lots of people have been doing it online. I've seen 1 correct answer online so far. So get your answer in now, and you'll get a little clap emoji, hopefully. Okay, I'm gonna go through them. So in fact, people in the room, do you want to shout out? So I don't know if I have a laser. I do. So for this one, Bayes TPC, Bayesian inference for thermal performance curves in R. Does anyone want to shout out what journal you think that one might be most suited for? Methods, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Methods publishes a lot of these like R package kind of papers, things that are tools that can be used by other scientists. They all go in Methods. Betting on rains that do not come, monsoon failure and leaf area overshoot relate to increased tree mortality from drought. What do you think? People in the room, shout out. Functional ecology, yeah, well done. So yeah, it's mechanistic. It's got this mechanistic thing. So it's looking at what happens when drought happens, and it's not looking to kind of go into apply that anywhere further. That's like a very pure ecology journal. Quantifying the value of participatory science for conservation decision making. What do you think? Applied ecology, yeah, Journal of Applied Ecology. So novel, broad-reaching papers on the interface of ecological science and management of the natural environment. So yeah, it's got the people and it's got the management as well. Well done, everyone. And then the last one, danger versus fear. I mean, we already know what the answer is. A key to understanding biophobia. But do you want to shout it out? People in nature. Yeah, great. So yeah, it's the relationship. It's all about this relationship between humans and nature. How did everyone do? Yeah, good. Great. Well done, everyone. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about the editorial process. So we've been kind of skirting around this so far today. I was hoping that this would appear, but I obviously didn't set it up without the answers there. But how many people do you think see your paper before acceptance? This is a clue, but it's not the whole answer. So what do you think? How many people do you reckon? Shout out answers. I'll shout them out in the chat if you're online. Four? Yeah? Any advances on 4? Any less than 4? Any answers in the chat? No? Yeah, it is 4. Well done. So you've got, and this, I will say, this does differ per journal. So I'm talking a lot about the BES journals, obviously. If you submit to a BES journal, this is how many it would be. Some journals have slightly different. It might be slightly more, slightly less. So we've got senior editors. So these are like really broad overview scientists. So these are academics who are working in the field. They're usually quite senior, and they have an overall responsibility of what gets published in the journal. So for instance, Journal of Applied Ecology has 5 senior editors and about 100 associate editors. So the senior editor makes the initial assessment and they'll assign it to an appropriate associate editor. So in this chart, this would be the senior editor and they would assign it to some number of associate editors, one of their many associate editors. The associate editors, they have a more focused experience. So they might be an expert in a particular area. That biophobia paper, for instance, they might have a specialism within biophobias, whereas the senior editor might just be an expert in relationships between people and animals. So they handle the peer review of the manuscript. So they'll assess it, they'll invite reviewers, they'll look at the reviewer comments and they'll make a recommendation to the senior editor about what to be done, what's to be done with the paper. So the reviewers, they have very specific expertise relevant to the paper. And it can be sometimes that there might be a reviewer with maybe a data analysis expertise and someone with a topic analysis expertise. The reviewers can be general, or they can just look at specific aspects of the paper. So they'll critically assess and make comments on the manuscript, and they'll suggest revisions to the authors and recommendations to the associate editor. So those are the oh, sorry, it was 5. It was 5. Those are 4 people. We've got 4 people already. The 5th person is the editorial office. So this is, in our case, this is my team. So they're often not academic, though a lot of us do have an academic background, and we'll handle administrative tasks. So when the paper first comes in, before it even goes to the senior editor, the assistant editor will have a look at it, and they'll make sure that it has all of the sections, all of the right sections, so that the senior editor doesn't find halfway through that they're missing like a method section or something. And they'll also take care of admin and make sure that the reviewers submit on time, that the associate editor submits on time, and that everything keeps moving. So they're a really, really integral part of the entire process. So it's 5 people. Sorry about that, everyone. So this is the peer review process as a like a flow chart. So just to run through it quickly, it's very complex. And it's also one of those things that when you submit a paper, you just often won't hear back for a long time. You don't really know what's going on. So the author submits a paper here. And then this is the bit that the assistant editor will do. They'll say, is everything we need here? If there's not, they'll go back to the author. If there is, then the assistant editor will check the paper and assign it to a senior editor. The senior editor answers this question: does the paper fit the scope of the journal? If the answer is no, then it goes all the way down here to reject, and the authors may need to rewrite or try a different journal if it's out of scope. If the answer is yes, it's in scope, then the senior editor will assign it to an associate editor, and they'll make that same kind of question, that same judgment of, is the paper relevant for the journal? And if they say no, again, it'll be rejected. If they say yes, then they'll start to invite reviewers. And they will continue doing this until they have 2 reviewers agreed. So one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that reviewing is really hard. So it's really hard to find 2 reviewers to review papers. So if you're offered to do a peer review, it's a really cool thing to have a go at. So I do recommend that you engage with peer review. And like our colleague from the Grassland Society was saying earlier, every paper needs 2 peer reviewers. So if you want to publish, that means that 2 people need to review your work. So you should also pass that back and review papers. So once the reviewers have submitted, then it will go to the editor, the associate editor, who will read the reports, and they'll make a recommendation. The senior editor will then look at the recommendation. If they don't agree, then they can have a chat and come to an agreement. But if they do agree, then the senior editor makes a decision, and they send that decision letter off to the author, which will either be an accept, which will mean the paper will be published, revision, which will mean address any requested changes and then resubmit, or a reject, which might mean trying a different journal or trying a rewrite. It's worth saying that I've never seen a paper go to accept on the first round. There's usually something to be revised, just something to improve clarity. But a revision decision is a good decision. There are also a few different types of peer review. So you might come across this when you're reading about a journal, and it might influence why you would submit to a journal. So single anonymous peer review is, I think it's the most common. So this means that the associate editors and the reviewers know the identity of the authors. So the reviewer will receive a paper and they'll have the authors' names on it. However, the authors don't know the identity of the associate editor or the reviewers. And this is very common. You might submit a paper to a journal, and then the reviewers will know it's your paper, but you might never find out who reviewed your paper. And then there's double anonymized review, which is the other. It's blinded on both sides. So reviewers don't know the identity of the authors. If you agree to review a paper on a double anonymous paper journal, you'll just get the manuscript without the author names, without the institution, without any funding information. So you wouldn't be able to know where the authors are based and what their names are. And then there's triple anonymized review, which is that the editor also doesn't know the identity of the authors. So this one is a little more tricky to make work in an editorial system, because we want to avoid conflicts of interest. So you don't want someone reviewing a paper, handling a paper from someone in their lab. So it's quite unusual, triple anonymous review. And then there's open review, which is that everybody knows everybody. So when you submit, you will know who your reviewers are, you'll know who your associate editor is, your senior editor, and they'll also know who you are. So they're kind of two different strands that kind of go in completely opposite directions. Anonymization has been proven to reduce bias. And actually, we published a study. We did a trial on functional ecology a couple of years ago, where for 2 years, we either put papers through double anonymous or single anonymous peer review. And we found that after 2 years, when we looked at the decisions, people on double anonymous review were less likely to have biases against them. And this are both positive and negative bias. So there could be bias from, if someone comes from Harvard, and a reviewer might look at that paper and be like, oh, it's from Harvard, it must be a very good paper. Equally, the opposite might happen, and they might not recognize the name of the institution, in which case they might be like, oh, I don't know this institution, don't know this author, so it might not be a very good paper. So double anonymous review really reduces those biases, both positive and negatively. So we actually are switching all of our journals onto double anonymous peer review now. So most of them are already on it. I think 5 or maybe 6 of them are on it already. And then the openness, it supports transparency. So there is actually an option where you can publish in Journal of Ecology. It's double anonymous peer review. You won't know the identity of anyone. But then we have open peer review reports. So once it's published, the peer review reports are published alongside it. And if the reviewer wants to add their name, they can add their name to the review report. But we as a society have decided to prioritize removing bias compared to supporting transparency in the peer review process. So how long does it take to go through peer review? You might submit a paper and be like, oh my gosh, it's been a very long time. So these are data from Journal of Applied Ecology from 2024. Time to immediate reject is 5 days. So this is if the senior editor has had a look and they're like, this paper is out of scope for the journal, you'll hear back within a working week to hear that it's not suitable, and then you can go to another journal. And then if it is suitable and it's gone through all the way through to acceptance, then this is the time, 169 days. So that's quite a long time, but that includes going back for revisions, the time it takes to do the revisions, and then eventual acceptance as well. So it's quite a long period of time. If you need a paper to be published for something that's going to happen in like a month, that's definitely not going to happen. But what you can do is you can put your paper up on a preprint server so that it's available, and you can use it as evidence to show that you've got it, and it's in review with a journal, but people can read it already without peer review. And then time from acceptance to online publication, this is 36 days. I think we might be a little bit quicker than that now, but basically once you've had your paper accepted, there's a few different things you need to do. You need to do some proofs, you need to add in all of your like funding information, conflict of interest, ethics statement, all of those things, and then it will be online for you to share with everyone within 36 days. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about editorial decisions as well. So if you receive a reject decision, you can have a look and see if there's any useful feedback. So there should always be useful feedback. Peer review should be a friendly process. So it shouldn't be an intimidating thing, although I realize that it often is. But there should be useful things in these rejection letters. What can you address? Is it just a scope issue? If it's a scope issue, or if maybe that you think after looking at it that it could go to a different journal, then you can have a look at a different journal. Or if you think it might be, actually there's something in the methodology that I need to just tweak, then you can go back to the field, the lab, or the computer. And then there's reject and refer, which is, so for instance, if you submitted to Journal of Ecology, But as I said earlier, we make decisions based on whether it has a significant advance to the field. If it doesn't look like it's got a significant advance to the field, but it still looks like a good paper, then we might offer you a reject and refer decision to a different journal that doesn't make those kinds of decisions on novelty. And you can actually transfer the reviews as well with that. So it might really speed up your process in the next journal because you've already got the peer review reports with you. And then if you've got a major or minor revisions, then this is great. It means your paper is very likely to be published in the journal. So you need to carefully draft a response. So it'll be a response to each of the points that the editors and reviewers made. Always remember to be polite. I'm sure you all will be anyway, but it's really key that you don't need to do everything that they ask. But if you're not going to do something, explain why you haven't done it and just be super polite. And then refer to line numbers when you're referring to things. So if you're saying, oh, I've made a change at this point, just make sure you put the line numbers in. It makes it easier for the editor to go and check. And then acceptance. So final thing, if you've gone through the revisions and you've got it accepted, so there'll be final checks. You want to ensure that all of your statements, your ethics and things like that are all there. And then there are journal specific checks. So for instance, we mandate that you archive your data as well once your paper is accepted, so that someone can download your data and they can repeat your analysis and make it reproducible. And then after it's published, you've got a DOI, you've got a citation, and you might be thinking, what do I do now? So all author-friendly journals, like society journals, like Wiley journals, they'll offer you opportunities to get the research into the hands of people who it matters for. And I really encourage you to take up these offers, make the most of them, because these are all free. So on all of our journals, we will always post a social media post about every paper that goes into the journal. We will always offer you, if you want to write a blog, and they're usually to describe the story behind the research. So if it's field-based research, you can talk about what it was like in the field. And these also go down really well. They'll also receive extra promotion on social media. Press releases. So we often get our papers featured in, I realize these are quite Anglo-centric journals, newspapers here, but we do get our papers featured in news outlets around the world. And I do encourage you to speak to your institution about press releases, because most press releases come from the institution, but the BES can also support with press releases as well and get your paper out into the news. Podcasts as well. We may sometimes offer podcasts. It sort of depends on the availability of the assistant editor. But again, you can kind of have an interview with someone at the BES and talk about your research, and that will be posted on the platform, which gets quite a lot of listeners every month. And then there's plain language summaries, which we offer this on some journals, but even if you just want to do this, even if a journal doesn't offer it, these are like 200-word summaries in plain English or any language that you want to publish it in, to describe your research as though you're speaking to, we always say you're speaking to like an older school child, and how would you describe it? Somebody who's maybe done science up to the age of 16, how would you describe your research to them? Taking out all of the jargon, taking out all of the unnecessary stuff, and just to get the point across. And these do really well. These get picked up really, really well, especially actually in the People and Nature Journal, because it's got a lot of people-focused work. So I'm going to hand over now to Arlie, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about an editor's perspective.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, okay. Yeah, my name is Arlie Muth, and I am editor-in-chief for Ecology and Evolution and the Journal of Biogeography. And as a full-time Wiley employee, I work remote. I am located in Western Montana. So it's 3:15 a.m. here right now. So please, I really ask if anyone wants to turn on their camera or be more interactive, or the people that are there in person, please, interaction is gonna help keep me awake at this point. So I'd love to hear from all of you, and I want this presentation to, if a question comes up, even if it's not directly related to what I'm speaking about, I would feel free to ask me any questions about publication while I'm giving this presentation. This presentation sort of comes from things that I have learned coming from academia and then coming into working as a full-time editor, and things that I've learned about the publication process that I wish I had known earlier in my career, that I think really help just simplify the process and help you understand how it's working and your role as an author in this process, which is the most important role. And one of the things that I really, that's really big goal for me as an editor, is to make sure that authors feel that their papers are getting assessed fairly. So I saw that that poll that Rowena posted earlier in this workshop, and really, I just hope that in the future, authors continue to just feel like their papers are getting assessed fairly, because that's just such an important thing. And I think that that's continuing to change and get better and better. As Rowena stated, the publication process is evolving, and I think that it's more and more tailored towards accepting all different kinds of science coming from different disciplines, from different perspectives, all different sorts of things. So this is definitely a big goal of mine as continuing to work in the publication field and working with scientific publications. So I think a little bit later in the workshop, we're actually going to talk about us in this workshop, that how we got into publishing. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about my background then. But just really quickly, I am a botanist and also a marine ecologist. I started out more in botany, moved towards marine ecology. So one of my life goals is to do a dive in the Eclonia maxima forest that you guys have down in South Africa. So if anyone has been diving in those forests, please let me know. I know this group is more terrestrial scientists, but I would love to hear how amazing that would be, because kelp forest ecology is one of my main focuses. So, but in general now, I would definitely just consider myself an ecologist. So yeah, you can move to the next slide. I wanted to just Rowena did a great job of introducing how to pick a journal, and I just wanted to go into a little more detail of certain things that I've learned throughout my career. There's so many journals to pick from, and there continues to be new journals every day that are popping up. And I think it's just really important to realize that finding a good fit for your work is so important, because your paper may be an amazing paper and really contributing to science, but if it doesn't quite fit within a certain journal, your paper may get rejected. And I think it's important to just realize that your work, there is a place for your work, as long as your science is sound and it's good, replicable science. Some people find impact factor very important. I love to see, like, I don't know if there's any way to do this, but if Rowena, you could tell me there if that's something that you guys think is important for publication. Is impact factor an important thing, or within the chat? I'd just be curious to hear. I think impact factor can be so it can be a little bit deceiving, because impact factor you can have a very broad impact factor or a very high impact factor when you're in a broader journal, and that information that you're publishing may not actually get to your community as much. And so I think impact factor is an important thing to consider, but I don't consider it the ultimate goal and the most important thing about publishing. Another thing that earlier in my career I was told was that it's kind of important to diversify where you publish. And I think this is another way to just make sure that your work is reaching a broader audience. If you're publishing in the same journal, especially nowadays, it's a little different, because we're not looking at so many, we're not looking at just issues, a certain issue of a journal where you might read it cut front to back. We're searching on Google, we're looking in through PubMed, through different ways of finding these papers. But I still think it's important to diversify where you publish, because you're making sure that you're ensuring that you're reaching different audiences. So for example, you might, if you're were in my field and you're publishing something about seaweeds, but you publish something that could be applicable to ecology and grasslands, it's important to maybe publish in a botany journal and not just a marine science journal. This is one example. And I think it's always important to ask colleagues their experience at different journals, which ones they've maybe received more citations, or they've had a positive experience submitting to that journal. Open calls for special issues are really great, because this is a great way to ensure that your paper fits within the scope of that journal and what that editor and that editorial board is interested in for that journal. So it's sort of a little bit more of a specific way to make sure that your paper fits within that journal. And then I think a social media presence can be important, but really a lot of that, as much as the publishers and the different societies do to promote your work, it also falls on you as the author to make sure that you're promoting your work as well. And then the societies usually and the publishers can kind of boost that. But I think it's important to promote your work as well. But my big take home is, at the end of the day, it's just really important to make your work available. This is why working with scientific publication and with authors, it's just such an important relationship where we're here to support getting your work out there so that other scientists can use the information that you've gained from your work. But that also, we need your work to get out there and be published and to find the right home for it. And I think sometimes we have preconceived ideas of where we would want to publish our work. And it's really important to have those goals in your mind, but also realize at the end of the day, the really important thing is that your paper gets published. So I just want to, I clicked my keyboard to change the slide. So can we change? I just want to show you one example from myself that I learned. This was in 2020. I was working on a couple different papers, and one of them was with a larger group. We did this meta-analysis on functional redundancy. And initially we submitted to ecology, and we got that reject and refer decision. And at first it felt sort of, we saw that rejection word and we thought, oh, our paper got rejected. But we got together as a group and we discussed it, and we said, yeah, let's go for this reject and refer. We published in Ecosphere, which is the Ecological Society of America. It's their open access sound science journal. And we have 460 citations for this paper. It's been cited by so many people, seen by so many people. And yes, that wasn't exactly the journal that we were going for, but clearly it's a great journal. It has a great following, and it's this paper is being discovered through searches. I had another paper that my co-author and I, again, were sort of stuck on a specific journal that we were shooting for and a specific level of a journal that we were shooting for. And it did not get accepted by a few of those journals. Kind of ran out of steam. She got a faculty position, is busy. This paper never saw the light of day, and it has 0 citations. So from this example, I really wish that I had just decided, because we also got a reject and refer decision on this paper. And I do really wish I would have taken advantage of that referral network, because this paper would be out there and it would likely have a couple citations at this point. So I just want to, I just really want to encourage everyone to think of the ultimate goal is getting your paper published. That's really what you want to focus on. Oh, and the next one. So I just mentioned the term sound science, and I would love to hear in the chat, or if anyone is familiar with this term, sound science. I think it's a little bit more of a term that we use in publication, and I wasn't familiar with this term before I got into publishing. So I'd really be curious to hear if anyone has heard of this term, or what your idea of a sound science journal is. Anything in the chat? I don't know if you're hearing anything, Rowena, from the people, but with sound science journals, the idea is that in these journals, and two examples of this that are BES associated journals or BES journals is Ecology and Evolution, which is one of the journals that I work on, and then also Ecological Solutions and Evidence. And these are both sound science journals. And what this means is that in these journals, as long as it's good science, we want to publish your work in these journals. It's really important to get the research out to the community, and it's not as important as us as editors of these journals to try and figure out, well, is this going to be a highly cited paper? Is this novel enough? Is this groundbreaking that we want to put it in our journal? Our idea is that we want to really just get the information out to the scientific community. And one of the ways that we describe this is we're author-focused editors. We don't want our authors to be editor-focused. In other words, we don't want our authors to try and think, well, how could I, spin my story that Arlie's going to find it interesting, that it can get published in the journal that she's editor on. It's more about, we want to hear what your work is, and as long as the science is sound and it's good quality work, we want to publish it. At these types of journals, we really look for reasons to publish versus reject, and we work with authors a little bit more on this. Novelty isn't required. Another really important thing is that negative results we will publish negative results. We will also publish incremental results. If there's a study that repeats and validates a previous study, that kind of thing is so important. And science really builds on these small steps. And these small steps and these papers are what then leads to those big groundbreaking papers that maybe you would see in Nature. But you can't have those big papers if you don't have these smaller steps that the science is building on. So at a sound science journal, that's what that term means, is that it's still, a lot of the papers are still very highly cited. They're very important and they really build on things, but we're not looking so much for to fit our scope is very broad, and we're not looking as much to fit a certain idea of a paper, or that it has to be extremely novel or that sort of thing. So that's when we talk about sound science, that's what we're referring to. Okay, the next slide. So at these sound science journals, we really aim to send most papers out for peer review. And if your paper isn't sent out for peer review, it's likely because it's a little bit out of scope, or maybe it's the formatting isn't quite that. Actually, we do have free format, so it wouldn't be so much the formatting, but let's say somebody submits something that's really not quite a research article at this point. Maybe there's the methods are lacking, or there's not much of a discussion. That's the kind of thing where we will reject and not send it out for peer review. But we really take the comments from the peer review process. And oops, sorry, my computer wanted to restart. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I still okay? So it's just really important for us to try to send as many things out. Yeah, I know. Sorry, my computer wanted to restart, which is frustrating. But this is very different from a lot of journals that are looking to reject papers without review. And a lot of that comes from the fact that it's hard to find reviewers these days. It is really difficult to find reviewers. So I did put in the chat that from an editor's perspective, always feel free to email the editorial office or your handling editor about an update on your paper, but also realize that sometimes, you can invite up to 30 people and not get a reviewer on your paper. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the journal isn't really working to get reviewers for your paper. Sometimes it takes longer, but at least you can understand what the holdup is in your process if it feels like it's taking a while. And at some of these publication workshops I've done in the past, people have commented that they feel that an editor may, if you email them and ask them, then an editor may influence their decision potentially in a negative way. And I just want to assure you that would not affect the outcome of your paper if you emailed them, especially just checking in on the status of your paper, and that would not affect an editorial decision. But I just want to reiterate that, if the science is good, we're going to work to publish it. And at Wiley, there is always going to be a home through the BES journals or Wiley journals. There is going to be a home for your paper as long as the science is sound and really good science. Okay. All right. So one of the things that I am hoping that continues to improve in the publication process is that reviewer comments, when you get a reviewer comment back, that these comments are constructive. And I think that it's really important when you get your reviews back. It's such an intimidating process. You've put so much time and effort and thought and energy and into this, the starting all the way from the development of your project, your field work, your lab work, your analysis, then writing up this paper, and you're getting these comments back. And it's just something that as a scientist, I understand you put so much of yourself into your work. And this is really part of the intimidating part of the process, is then you get these reviewer comments back. And I think that it's getting better, but I think what it was in the past was that the reviewer comments could sometimes be very unnecessarily harsh. And this really doesn't help anybody if you get these unnecessarily harsh comments. So one thing that I try to really reiterate with authors is that really focus on the associate editor comments and the editor-in-chief comments. That gives you a good overview of the review and what that editor feels the potential for your paper is. I think one of the first papers that I published, I read the reviewer comments and thought, this paper is never going to get published. This is basically a reject. But the decision was major review or major revisions. And so I do think it's really important to first focus on what the decision is, what the editor is saying, and your associate editor, and then move on to the reviewer comments. And this goes for that reject and refer decision as well. I think it's really important to focus on that if an editor refers your paper, that means they really see merit in that paper. They know that this is a good paper. It's just maybe not a good fit for that specific journal. So even though in that decision it has that reject term, it's really important to think of it as not a straight rejection, more of a reject. And let's refer this to another journal that this is going to fit better, or it's going to be a better community for this journal, for this paper to be published in. So this is also really important. I want to mention that you take in what I'm talking about here as also when you are reviewing a paper, to think about this when you're reviewing a paper. Okay, let's see here. I just got a question in the chat I want to answer. How would you recommend dealing with very general reviewer comments? They are not always helpful in improving your manuscript, but can often be quite harsh. Yes, I'm going to show you an example of this in a second, but this is something that I think it's going to come up in the next slide, so I will definitely be addressing that. So this was a paper. This was my first paper that I was publishing for my PhD work. And this was Andrea, this was the comment that I got back from my paper was, unfortunately, I did not find anything novel or ecologically significant in this paper. Despite some seemingly obvious flaws with the design and interpretation, I found that the work seems quite parochial and does not offer anything significant to the global kelp literature base. So I would definitely call this review unnecessarily harsh. And I apologize to any of you who have gotten reviews like this, because it can be very, very crushing, and it's very, it makes you feel very, especially when you're earlier in your career, you think, should I continue in science? Or should I continue with this paper? Should I not even try to publish this paper? I don't know if any of you have felt that way. And I'm very sorry, because this is not helpful. And the person who's Andrea, who's on this, attending this workshop virtually, this comment helps nobody. There's not much you can do with this. So let's move to the next slide. I just want to show you, and I've highlighted in this paper or in this review, that a lot of this is somebody's opinion. It's somebody's opinion. I didn't find anything novel or ecologically significant in this paper. I found the work parochial and does not offer anything significant. And this is all somebody's opinion. This paper was about an Arctic species, and this could have been somebody, who knows, working in coral reefs, but they were a marine scientist, so they reviewed the paper, and this isn't helpful. So in this case, I think it was important for me, going back, when I think about when I first got this review, it's really important to go back for me and see that the associate editor in this case, as well as the previous case I was talking about, said this is a major revision. So that tells you that the associate editor sees the merit in your work. Now, for me as an editor at Ecology and Evolution, and how we really, the culture of the journal and the way that we talk to our associate editors about handling this sort of thing, is that I would actually make a comment to the author. I probably wouldn't delete or not include, obviously you wouldn't manipulate the review, but I would still want to include this review, because after a comment like this, there was some constructive comments. And it is important to realize, one thing that I took from this is that I need to work on making sure that this reader and the other readers understand why my work is significant, and understand that this is novel, and understand that my methods are sound and quality methods. And so as an associate editor or as editor-in-chief, I would say to the author, I'm sorry about the tone, or I would probably say I don't agree with these comments, but please take what you can from that review, the constructive comments, and incorporate those into your work. And I think so, if I was going to respond now to a comment like this, this question that we got in the chat about, how do you respond with this? How do you deal with this? I would say, for something like this, I have worked to make it more, to clarify the importance of my work, or to clarify the validity of my methods and my results. And then just kind of move on from there. Because also, I think the way that peer review is changing and evolving is that maybe for me as an editor, I may not send this paper back to that reviewer, because to me, this unnecessarily harsh words maybe denotes a tone of there may be some bias in this review. And I would probably just say, take what you can from this review, and then we're going to, move on, and probably not send this back to the reviewer. So that's how I would deal with it. I think it's really great to address it, but I don't think you have to go into detail if the comments are really general like this and really don't give you anything to improve your work on. So I hope that answered your question about the harsh reviews and just these general comments. What I often see is reviewers will respond, because usually these general comments come in the first paragraph of the review, and reviewers will just respond, "Thank you for your time reviewing my paper. Below you will see my responses, and I hope to clarify some of your concerns." Okay. Another question we got in the chat is, what about handling referrals to open access journals with high publication charges. Yeah, this is an issue in publishing right now, and it is hard because most of these sound science journals, the way that they're run, they're still, the peer review is very rigorous. At least I can speak for the journals at Wiley. The peer review is rigorous, but there are at these gold open access journals, there are going to be higher fees. But that's where it's important to then run through the different mechanisms that Rowena and Adam laid out on how you can get your paper published, either through waivers, through transformational agreements, through the Research for Life. So that's how I would say, working to try to get your paper, try to get funding in other ways to publish your paper in these open access journals or sound science journals that are often open access. I think it's always worth contacting the editors or the editorial office, or as Rowena said, a lot of these waivers are not taken advantage of. So it's always worth at least asking. If you've tried every other way to pay for your publications, it's always worth asking, because the worst thing that could happen is they say, I'm sorry, we don't have waivers for this. But yeah, that it is hard when you do get referred to a journal that you're unable to publish in. The other thing that I would suggest is you could always reach out to the editor. One thing that I will do for authors, if they contact me and we can't figure out a way to help them pay, is I do have it's like a PDF image of different journals within Wiley, that some are the hybrid journals that we talked about earlier that you can publish in without a fee, but it wouldn't be open access. So there are these different kinds of journals, and there are different ways that other editors and people can help you pay for this sort of thing. All right, next slide, please. So it's not required. As an editor, I definitely don't require authors to incorporate each reviewer comment, but I do require that you at least acknowledge that reviewer comment. Reviewers spend a lot of time on these papers, and even if it's an opinion or you don't agree and you do not want to incorporate that, it's still really important to just acknowledge that you are respectful of the reviewer's time and that you have a justification for why you maybe aren't going to incorporate something. And this could be, that's out of the scope of this work. Logistically, we cannot do that. All kinds of things. Usually I would say the most common one is that it's outside of the scope of the work that you're trying to publish. But I think it's always important to do the best that you can to make your response letter and your comments to the reviewers. I'm going to see this. Sorry, I'm reading a comment. I'll finish my thought here, but it's always important to make sure that the reviewers know that you took their comments seriously and that the editors know that you're taking those comments seriously. But it's not required that you incorporate what the reviewers have to say. And I think it's important to remember these principles that we're talking about here. As I mentioned before, when you're reviewing other manuscripts, make sure that your comments are constructive. I have seen amazing reviews that are rejecting a paper, but it really gives the authors a pathway to how they can improve their paper and how they can get their paper published. And you can reject a paper without being harsh. And there's always going to be some redeeming qualities in a paper. And I think it's also important to mention those as well.
Hi, Ali. Can you hear us?
Yes, sorry everyone.
That's okay. Thank you very much for restarting. We'll just carry on then if you're happy to.
Yeah. Is everyone back from break?
Everyone
Okay,
is back or very nearly back. So yeah.
great. Okay.
Thank you.
But yeah, I think what I wanted to say is that I just think it's really important to make sure to that the reviewers know that you attempted to address their comments. One thing that I see often is if the paper goes back to the reviewers once the revision has been submitted, and they just see that certain things have just completely been brushed over, that's a reason for them to say, I don't feel that the authors really went through and were thorough in their revisions. So I think it's really important to at least address and explain why you maybe disagree, or why it's not possible for you to incorporate those. But I think it's really important to remember that the conversation with the reviewers, the authors, the editors, that it's a conversation. It's not an absolute. And I think that when I was earlier in my career and first publishing, I always felt very intimidated by the editor's final decision, and that it was this absolute decision. And really, it is more of a communication and a conversation, and making sure that that everything is being clarified, and that the authors, that you're really being able to voice the importance of your work and your stance on this, especially if it's a little bit different from what the reviewers say. So always feel that you can go back to the editors or the reviewers and have a constructive conversation about different things that might come up in the reviews that you receive back on your manuscripts. Okay, you can move to the next slide. So again, and Rowena went through this a little bit, but to be, a point-by-point response, to be very clear about what you're responding to. I've seen authors delineate reviewer comments from their responses using italics, a different font, a different color. I've also lately seen a lot of tables where they'll put they'll have the comments and then the response will be within the table. Just making sure that it's very clear and clear about line numbering, and that you really took this process very seriously. And that really gives us as editors confidence in this revision, that this revision was really thoroughly looked through, and that the comments were incorporated, and that the authors are taking the process very seriously. So in general, the more time you can spend on your response letter and your revision ultimately is going to cut down on how many rounds of review your paper needs to have in order to get published. All right, next one. So again, I really want to reiterate this, that this reject and refer decision, to really think of it as not so much of a rejection, but that the paper just wasn't a good fit for that journal. I completely understand that there is sometimes the referring journal is one that maybe that it's not, your group is not able to afford the APCs, the publication charges. And again, I would refer you back to the beginning of this workshop, where Rowena and Adam really laid out those different mechanisms that you can utilize in order to get your paper published. But also just remember that this is telling you that the editor that is handling your paper sees merit in your paper, sees that it's good quality science. It's just maybe not a good fit for that specific journal. And the transfer networks really do benefit authors, and they also really benefit the community by using reviews, that transferring with reviews, so that your paper doesn't need to get re-reviewed by additional reviewers and really use up those resources of reviewers, because that's something that's always tricky to find. So oftentimes at Ecology and Evolution, we will get a paper that's transferred to us that has come in with reviews, and the authors have really incorporated those reviews into that revision, and the paper gets accepted. So that is one time when a paper can sometimes get accepted, when it's first submitted, but that's because it's already gone under review and the authors have then addressed those comments. So this really is a great a great program. And if you can take advantage of the refer and transfer network, I definitely recommend that. Okay, next slide. I think this is one of the last ones. So this is when I started doing these publication workshops. I did a number of these workshops in Brazil this last March, and I just started to think about what really have I learned from, and I'll talk about this a little bit this afternoon, from working in all of these different capacities within publishing. So I have worked as an editorial office at the admin level. I've been a reviewer, I've been an author, I've been an associate editor, and now I'm working in this editor-in-chief capacity. And through working through all of these different ways within publishing, there's just a few things that I really like to pass on to people. And I think one important aspect that even at this point in my career, I still have to remind myself of this, but by the time you are publishing your work, you really are the expert of your project, your study species within, especially within your study species and your specific location. Of course, there might always be somebody who has more experience in that specific species, but I doubt they have more experience with that species asking your questions in your location. It's really important to remember that you are the expert in this and that you made these decisions and you designed your experiment in a certain way to address certain questions. And usually what I find is that it just takes a little bit more clarifications. If somebody isn't completely understanding the importance of your work or thinks that there's issues with your methods in general, that can be fixed through clarification. It doesn't mean that you need to redo your experiment. And so I think that's really important to remember. And it's hard. I see the term imposter syndrome coming up in this. And I think it's very true when you feel really intimidated by the publication process, you're intimidated by editors, to get in your head when you get these reviewer comments back. But I think this is an important thing to just really hold on to, that you are an expert at this point. There's always going to be things that you could do better, but really that's a really important part of the scientific process, is to use a method and realize this wasn't the best method for this, and to talk about that in your discussion and make sure that future scientists reading your work can learn from that, and that they don't then spend resources and time trying to answer a question and that using that method that we've realized that's not the best way to address a certain species or a certain ecosystem or whatever you're looking at. These limitations are actually really important to bring up in your discussion, and it doesn't invalidate your work or make it seem like you have flaws within your work. I think it really actually validates you as a scientist, that you're bringing up, this is what I've learned and these are the limitations. I think it's really important to bring these points up in your discussion. And also stand by your work. It doesn't need to say that, you don't need to say in your discussion, I did this incorrectly, because that's not the truth. You did something, you learned from that experience, and that is now how you would do that method or ask that question or whatever. You would do it differently in the next round of your work. So I think it's important to stand by your work and your decisions at the time, and that you're making the best decision that you can in that time. And especially if you're doing field work, people need to understand that when you're doing field work or lab work or any kind of experiments, things happen. Things happen that are unexpected all the time. And oftentimes really interesting results come from these things changing, but you also have to in a very, in that moment, change your methods or change certain things. And I also would encourage you to take as many notes as you can about this sort of stuff, because I've had experiences where I think there is no way I'm going to forget why maybe I had to move from having a sample size of 10 down to 7 or something. There's no way I'm going to forget this. And then you're going to write up your paper and you think, wait, why did I reduce my sample sizes again? What was the reason for this? Was it whatever it was, the cost of analysis, the weather, whatever got in your way? So really making notes that allow you to go back and look at why you made that decision in the time. One of the bigger regrets that I have from, it was actually my first paper that I published, was that there was a section of my paper that the experiment, one reviewer felt that the experiment did not fit in with the rest of the study. I think that it's been a while, so I don't remember their exact wording, but they thought that that experiment didn't improve or didn't contribute to the results of the study. And I was so intimidated by the publication process, so worried that if I argued or wanted to try to say my point of view of why I wanted to include that then they would say, okay, well, then we're not going to publish your paper. I was so worried about that I just took out an entire section of my paper. And I really regret that, because I think that section, it was like a mechanistic part of my paper. It explained some things. And I think if I could have just taken a deep breath, clarified some things, and then the reviewers would have seen why that experiment was important. So there's no reason to change or remove things if you really don't agree. And I think it's important to just realize that, to clarify and realize that you do have a lot of power in this process, in the publication process. And I do think that is improving through time, and editors are starting to see, yeah, it's really important to have more of a conversation with authors. We don't want to make these decisions because, again, in this situation, that you are the expert. There might be things that I broadly have experienced or know or am aware of, but I'm not as knowledgeable as you, the author, would be in this specific situation for this specific project. So I just think it's really important to remember the power that you have, and to realize that as long as you can discuss things in a respectful way, that it's really great to have a conversation with editors. And if an editor, there still are going to be some editors that maybe will not agree with you, and then maybe that's not the best home for your paper. I think that's also important to remember. But it's the big take home is that as long as your science is good, there is a place for your work. And I think it's just really important to remember to get your work out there, whether or not it's a different type of journal than you were expecting. The way that we search for papers now is completely different. And as long as your paper is in a journal that the work can be found and searchable online, the importance of the actual journal, that it's still very, I mean, I'm not saying the journal isn't important, but I really just think that sometimes we focus on that we have to get it in this high profile journal or this specific journal. And it's just really important to just get your science out there. Let's see here. I'm going to take some questions now from the chat, because this is the end of this part of my presentation. So one of the comments here is, for early career scientists just starting their master's or PhD, what advice do you have for them to engage their supervisors in discussions about publishing? Good questions to ask. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it depends on if your supervisor, I think, you always want to make sure and ask your supervisor what kind of journal they're thinking that your paper should go in. But I think it's important to actually have ideas for yourself to be able to go to your supervisor, because oftentimes as a student, you're doing a lot of literature review. You might be more in touch with the journals right now that are publishing that type of work, where your supervisor may be a little bit detached from doing as much of that like deep literature searches that you're in, especially when you're first starting projects. So I think it's good to ask your supervisor what kinds of journals they see, but have ideas in your mind as well, so that you can come in and say, well, this is the type of paper, this is the type of journal I would like to publish in. It's also important to understand your funding situation with your advisor. Can we publish open access? What kinds of what kind of funding do we have for publications? I think that's really, really important to ask, and they might be able to help. In addition to waivers and things like that, there also often are like set aside budgets through funding agencies and different just different different kind of pockets of money that can help with publishing. So I think that's important as well. But I think the main thing that I would say is to ask your supervisor, is to, like I said, go in with ideas and then see what types of journals they recommend. Let's see here. Yeah. In other words, yes, prepare first. Make sure that you're not just going in and saying, what journal do you want me to submit this to? Have your own ideas. I think that's always good. Let's see here. Oh, reposting it. Thank you, Debbie, because when I restarted my computer, it did delete all of the chat. So how do we deal with increasing tension between versus the need? So this is a question. Sorry, I should read it out to everyone there. How do we deal with the increasing tension between doing science that has societal impact, which necessitates parochial context, versus this need for things to be globally significant, where the outcomes are important to share globally? Yes, this globally significant thing, this is why for my two journals, Journal of Biogeography and Ecology and Evolution, I see this is a big difference between these two journals. And the Journal of Biogeography is a journal that we require it to be a little bit more novel and broad reaching, and that sort of, we're asking for a bigger picture question. So I think if there's an editor or there's issues with them really wanting you to make your paper globally significant and it's too far reaching for your paper, that's where I really think more niche journals or more sound science journals are really good homes for these types of papers, because these papers, this work needs to get out there, but sometimes it's still in a development stage. It's maybe a big part of your project, but that is a small step that needs to build before you can get to that study that's globally significant. And I think that you always want to try as best you can to put your work in the context of how it applies to other researchers other than just within your very specific field. But you don't want to overreach and sort of try to claim that you found these results that you don't want to overinterpret your results, I think is what I'm trying to say. So in this case, honestly, if you're struggling to figure out how to really get your paper into that format that is saying this is very, very broad and people from around the world are going to be interested in this, I think it's actually at that point almost better to go to a different journal. Then that journal isn't necessarily a good fit for your work, if that makes sense.
Ali,
that's a good question.
Can you I wanted to add that this also could come down to how you tell the story as well, which is what we're going to talk about in our workshop after lunch.
Yes.
So it could be that maybe you've sent it to a journal and they don't think that it has this global significance, but it could be that it does. It's just not clear in the writing where that global significance is. And if that's the case, then we'll talk about story structure.
Yes.
And how to write to exemplify the global significance in the paper as well.
And I think that's such a good point, Rowena, because also some of the things that people will say is that maybe your paper isn't novel enough or that sort of thing. And I think that always comes down to how you present your work, because the experiments that you're doing, every experiment is going to be a little bit different and there is going to be some novelty in it. So it just sort of depends on how you're communicating your work. I think that's a really good point.
I think also, I don't know if there's any evidence behind this, but I think a lot of global studies come out of Europe and the USA because that's how they write things and they framed things, but actually the study maybe did just take place in one country or a couple of countries. So you can exemplify how it can be applied in a global context as well through the writing, which is hopefully what we'll cover in next session.
Yeah. And I do think it's also important though that your work doesn't, coming from a journal like like Ecological Solutions and Evidence and Ecology and Evolution, not every study needs to be globally important, and it needs to, these small contributions and these incremental steps, really that's what builds into these bigger bigger findings and bigger I'm seeing in here some journals do not accept regional or local studies, and I agree. I think that's where it's important to say this, local does not mean small. Exactly. And I think sometimes in that case, then it's important to just realize that that's maybe that journal is looking for these bigger picture take home messages. And that's just maybe not the best fit for your work. Not that it needs to be published in a regional journal or anything like that. But that's where I think it's important to go to some of these more, a journal like Ecology and Evolution that really realizes we want to get the information out there, and we think this is important, and these small steps are really important in building our knowledge base, and that's what leads to these bigger picture take home papers. So it's kind of a combination of what you're talking about, Rowena, of how you structure your manuscript, but also a lot of really important studies are small scale. It's really important for the progression of science, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think it's when we need local context to influence the understanding of the complexity of different systems. So yeah. No, I understand. So what we're seeing a lot in the chat is, local, one of the comments I see, local does not mean small. It's also important to contribute solutions to local issues. And I think, you want to talk about things locally, but so it's a balance. And I see, we're going to talk about it this afternoon. So I think this will definitely come up again.
Thank you. So it's time for lunch. So people online, we're going to be taking an hour here in the room, just under an hour. We'll be back at 1:15. If you can be ready at 1:15 to start, because we will be starting